Number 10. Aloha Airlines Flight 243. It was April 28, 1988, when a flight took off from Hilo in Hawaii, bound for Honolulu. The Aloha Airlines flight was perfectly ordinary. Nothing seemed to be technically wrong. But then, everything came undone when the plane reached 24,000 feet, or about 7,300 meters. Seemingly for no reason at all, an 18-foot, about 5.5-meter piece of the plane's roof ripped off, opening the plane up like a can of beans. It was an absolute nightmare for everyone on board. The roof peeled open, causing explosive decompression. A flight attendant was immediately sucked out of the plane, and a hole was blown in the fuselage. Surprisingly, mostly everyone survived the incident. Even with the roof ripped clean off, the Boeing 737 was able to land at the Kahului Airport in Maui. The flight attendant who was sucked out of the window was the only fatality. Her name was Clarabelle Lansing, and her body was never found after the incident. It probably fell into the ocean and was eaten by sea creatures. Out of the 89 passengers aboard the plane, 60 of them were injured. This isn't surprising, as most of them probably suffered a serious rupture of the eardrums. 8 of the passengers suffered severe injuries, but none of them died. Now, you're probably wondering how the roof of an airplane can be ripped open like that. Apparently, there was a crack in the fuselage before takeoff, and the airplane was revealed to be poorly maintained and out of date. Number 9. Surviving an alligator. Peter Joyce was kayaking on the Waccamaw River in North Carolina when he found himself face to face with a hungry alligator. Peter was just paddling along, minding his business, enjoying the scenery, and getting some exercise. The river was murky green. There were fallen trees and submerged logs everywhere, and he was honestly having a pretty good time. But what he didn't realize was that there was an alligator floating to his left just a few feet from him. Out of nowhere, the reptile brought its head out of the water and attacked. It tried to take out the kayak, and in the abrupt explosion made by the alligator, the thing flipped over. Amazingly, Peter caught the entire incident on his GoPro camera. In the video, he can be heard cursing as his kayak flips, and he finds himself in the water with the hungry animal. According to what Peter said later, he had absolutely no time to think or react. His mind was playing catch-up even as it happened. By some miracle, Peter managed to get himself upright, still in the kayak. He looked around for the alligator, gasped for breath, and then kept on paddling down the river. Peter has since acknowledged that he was very lucky to have survived the encounter, and he said that once he kept on paddling, the alligator never showed its scaly face again. Number 8. Lost at sea. Angelica Gaitan was discovered floating in the water 1.2 miles, or about 2 kilometers, from the Colombian coast. She had been floating in the sea for a very long time, and she should have been dead. Amazingly, Royland Visbal spotted her from his fishing vessel. He and a friend couldn't believe their eyes when they saw Angelica floating like a piece of driftwood over the waves. Apparently, she had been floating aimlessly in the ocean for a full 8 hours. When the 2 fishermen finally reached her and pulled her onto the vessel, she broke down in tears. Not only is it amazing that she survived being lost at sea without a boat, but the reason for her being in the ocean in the first place is beyond incredible. According to the New York Post, Angelica's trouble began 20 years before she was rescued from the sea. She told local radio that she had been suffering severe domestic abuse at the hands of her partner, who allegedly beat her when she was pregnant and assaulted her on a pretty regular basis. Then in September of 2018, he tried to kill her. She couldn't stand her situation anymore, and so she took a bus to the sea and threw herself in a desperate attempt to escape her life. But Angelica was not destined for death. After floating for 8 hours, refusing to drown, and seemingly unable to die, she was rescued. The Sun reported that her first words after being rescued were, "I was born again. God did not want me to die." Last we heard, Angelica was being brought to life with her daughters in the capital of Bogota. Number 7. Shot in the face with a spear gun. Off the coast of South Africa, a pastor ran into a bit of trouble one day while he was out spearfishing. This guy was a professional. He had been spearfishing for the past 10 years and never imagined he would end up hunting himself. It went down on August 30th, near the small coastal town of Scottsboro. Connie Hallowell was underwater with his spear gun, looking for yummy critters to catch and take home. What he never expected was to shoot himself in the face with his own gun. Ouch. A huge wave crashed over him, causing Hallowell to become disoriented and to lose control of his loaded spear gun. The weapon flew out of his hands, smashed against a chunk of coral in the reef, and somehow activated. Hallowell's face was directly in the line of fire. The spear gun went off and the spear itself ripped through his face. It shot directly through his cheek and came out the other side of his head near his other ear. It literally punctured his entire head like a skewer. By some divine intervention, the spear fisherman survived. The spear missed every important organ, tearing through his face without hitting anything critical. He did report being incredibly numb after the incident, but other than the immediate terror and fear and some lingering pain in his face, he was back to normal in just a few weeks. He did have an orbital fracture, but nothing more serious than that. The spear was removed from his face and he was able to leave the hospital after 48 hours. What would your reaction to this be? Let me know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 6. Swallowed by a whale. A scuba diver was swallowed by a whale and lived to tell the tale. It happened to Michael Packard, a veteran lobster fisherman who was out in the water off the coast of Provincetown a little before 8 a.m. Michael isn't a typical lobster fisherman. He's a diver, meaning he descends into the murky bottom and collects lobsters off the sandy sea floor. On this day, everything seemed pretty normal. Michael was happily plucking lobsters out of the sand, there were schools of fish swimming around, and a huge whale accidentally mistook him for a meal. From out of nowhere, Michael felt a great force coming at him from behind. Then, there was the impact. The lights went out and everything was completely black, and for a few seconds, it was as if he were stuck in a black void. Then he realized he was inside the mouth of a whale. He even claimed that he could feel the squeezing of the whale's mouth muscles from all around him. Luckily, the whale spat him out. After all, humans aren't really what whales like to eat. The entire ordeal only lasted a handful of seconds before Michael found himself flailing around at the surface. Nobody knows how Michael survived the incident. Some doctors have said his story is nonsense, and that he should have at least suffered some kind of injury while being moved around in the whale's mouth. But eyewitness accounts confirm his story, with some people actually seeing him being spat out by the whale. Number 5. Surviving execution. In September of 2009, Rommel Broom, a convicted murderer, was to be put to death. At 53 years old, it was finally time to meet his fate after a life of crime and murder. However, Rommel got exceptionally lucky. The executioner couldn't find a vein to stick him with the needle. It was a first for the executioner. He stuck him in the arm 18 times over the course of 2 hours and finally called it quits when he couldn't find a vein to stick the needle into. He couldn't give him the lethal injection, and it ended up saving Rommel's life. Or at least it prolonged the murderer's life a bit. Rommel had his execution rescheduled for the 16th of March, 2022. I'm not sure why they thought they needed to wait over 10 years to try again, but that's just the way it went. Rommel, after beating death, spent over a decade on death row waiting to die. But it didn't come from lethal injection. He died from COVID-19. According to NBC News, Rommel was one of at least 124 inmates in the state of Ohio that died from a coronavirus-related issue. He passed away at the age of 64, just about a year before he was scheduled for lethal injection. Number 4. Falling into a volcano. In 2007, a local guide fell into Oldonyo Lingay and lived to tell the tale. Oldonyo Lingay is an extremely deadly volcano, with its name meaning Mountain of God in the local language. It was during an expedition that the local guide accidentally tripped and fell directly into an active lava flow inside the crater of the volcano. But this volcano is a bit different from others that you may be familiar with. It erupts with lava so cool that it doesn't immediately kill. To give you an idea of the temperature inside the lava, it's roughly 950 degrees Fahrenheit. This is obviously quite hot, but it's only about half as hot as common lava, which can reach outstanding temperatures upwards of 1800 degrees Fahrenheit. The lava isn't even usually red, but black, because there's not enough heat radiating off the volcanic gunk to make it the fiery red color normally associated with lava. Here's what happened when the guide fell in. He splashed in the lava, flailed around a bit, and then climbed out by himself. Of course, he still suffered severe burns. Even if it was cold lava, it was still lava. His arms and both legs were seriously burned, and he had to be hospitalized. But he amazingly lived to tell the tale. If you're gonna fall into a volcano, Oldonyo Lengai is definitely the best one to try your luck with. Number 3, a mile to go. A woman almost died during what must have been the most intense skydiving excursion anyone has ever experienced. The incident happened in Canada when a 30-year-old woman participated in a jump at a skydiving facility in Quebec near the international airport. It wasn't even her first time jumping out of the sky. She was an experienced skydiver. But nothing could have prepared her for the horror that was to come. At about 6 p.m., the airplane approached the jump zone. The unnamed woman prepared herself, hung in the open door, and then flung her body into the air. Everything was great for a few seconds, but when she tried to open her parachute, it failed. She ended up falling 5,000 feet from the aircraft and smacking into the ground. According to eyewitnesses, they had never seen someone fall out of the sky so fast. The other skydivers watched helplessly as the woman fell like a stone into a patch of trees and vanished. They thought for sure she was dead, but she didn't die. She wasn't even that hurt. She had a few broken vertebrae, a few fractures, and was a bit traumatized. Other than that, she was perfectly fine. Nobody knows if this woman has rubber bones or if she landed on a pile of pixie dust, but she was certainly lucky to survive falling out of a plane. Number 2, surviving 2 pandemics. Mildred Geraldine was 102 years old when she became a legendary survivor. She was amongst a handful of seniors over 100 years old who survived the 2 major virus outbreaks of the past century. She survived the 1918 flu and COVID-19. Either she has the best immune system on the planet or is just very lucky. It was in 1918 that Mildred became infected with the Spanish flu. Like a champ, she beat the flu and went on to experience one of the greatest eras in human history, witnessing several wars, seeing a shocking advance in technology, and surviving into the digital age of information and social media. And she's not done yet. In 2019, she became infected with the deadly coronavirus that shut down the globe. It happened while residing in her assisted living facility in New Hampshire. But just like back in 1918, she got through the virus as if she were just sick with a common cold. Last we heard, Mildred is still up and about and doing great. At this rate, she's probably going to outlive us all. Number 1, crushed by a whale. A teenage boy is lucky to be alive after having a rather unfortunate encounter with a humpback whale. Unlike the lobster fisherman who got swallowed, the teenager got body slammed. It happened while he was in his fishing boat off the coast of New South Wales in Australia. He was out with his stepfather for an early morning fishing trip at the beginning of June. Shortly into the trip, a whale breached beside their boat. This isn't that uncommon, and it's not usually a big deal. But this time, the whale didn't land back down in the ocean. It crashed onto their vessel and landed on the teenager's head, breaking him into pieces. He was severely injured and had to be taken to the hospital in critical condition. For over a week, the teenager was stuck in a coma. He had injuries to his head and neck, and doctors weren't sure if he would make it, but he did. And after 8 days comatose, he woke up. Even after being crushed by a whale, the 18-year-old managed to pull through and survive. Thanks for watching. What's the craziest thing you've ever survived? Let me know in the comments, and be sure to hit the subscribe button and check frequently for more great videos from the channel. See you next time. Bye-bye.